Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving into a topic that I know is important to you, our listener. Understanding and navigating ADHD in adulthood.
That's right. You've shared a really great collection of resources with us. We've got articles from places like ADBA and CHEDD, some insights from Healthline, Wikipedia.
Yeah, even a Reddit thread and some info related to college students. It's quite a mix.
It is. And our goal today is really to, dig into these sources. We want to pull out the key insights, those aha moments, and importantly, some practical strategies.
Exactly. To give you a clearer picture of adult ADHD and, well, ways to thrive with it. Okay, so let's jump right in. We need to talk about how the understanding has shifted, right? Moving away from those older childhood subtypes.
Right. Now, the main diagnostic manuals, like the DSM-5 and ICD-11, they talk about adult presentations. So you have inattentive, hyperactive, impulsive, and combined.
And there's a difference in diagnosis for adults versus kids.
Yeah, a subtle but important one. For an adult diagnosis, the criteria look for at least 5 symptoms that were present before age 12. For kids, it's 6 or more.
Interesting. And what about how common it is? The prevalence?
Well, the numbers are pretty interesting. Globally, back in 2020, they estimated persistent adult ADHD, that's where you meet the criteria now, and had a confirmed childhood diagnosis was around 2.58%.
Okay.
But then there's symptomatic adult ADHD. That's meeting the criteria now, but maybe without that confirmed childhood diagnosis. And that number jumps quite a bit to about 6.76%.
Wow, that's a big difference. What does that suggest?
It raises questions, doesn't it? I mean, are we just getting better at spotting it in adults, or are other things going on? It's something the sources sort of touch on.
And there are other trends too?
Yeah, interestingly, higher rates seem to be reported in lower and middle income countries compared to high income ones. And generally, the prevalence tends to decrease a bit with age.
Okay, so let's get into the kind of day-to-day impact. What challenges do adults with these presentations face, especially at work? ADDA had a lot on this.
Oh, definitely. ADDA lays out a really comprehensive list. It's things like difficulty getting organized, struggling to focus, prioritizing tasks. That's a big one.
Yeah.
Time management issues, remembering all the tasks you need to do, filtering out distractions in the office or, wherever you work.
It sounds like a lot to manage.
It is. Juggling multiple projects, dealing with that feeling of mental or even physical restlessness, challenges with emotional control sometimes, impulsivity, and just managing energy levels throughout the day.
Right. It really does sound like a constant juggling act. You mentioned emotional control. Is that a core part?
Well, it's interesting. The DSM-5 calls emotional dysregulation an associated feature, but for many adults, it feels pretty central. It's that difficulty managing the intensity, maybe the duration of emotions.
Like getting easily frustrated.
Yeah, exactly, or maybe increased irritability, things like that. It seems to be a really persistent challenge for a lot of adults with ADHD. And if you think about executive functions.
Yeah, that term came up a lot. Let's unpack that.
Yeah.
What exactly are executive functions?
Okay, so think of them as your brain's CEO, or maybe the air traffic control center. They're the high-level mental skills you use to manage yourself and your resources to achieve a goal.
Okay, like what specifically?
Things like working memory, holding information in your mind while you use it, organization, planning ahead, prioritizing what's important, managing your time effectively, staying focused even when there are distractions, and cognitive flexibility, which is like being able to adapt when plans change or switch between tasks.
So when those functions aren't working smoothly, which is common in ADHD.
Exactly. You can see how that directly leads to those workplace challenges we just talked about. It's like trying to run a company when your planning department, your time management team, your focus supervisor, they're all having an off day.
That makes sense. So if these challenges aren't addressed, what are the potential long-term consequences? It sounds like it could be pretty significant.
The sources definitely point to some serious potential impacts. Things like poor performance reviews at work, maybe higher job turnover, even periods of unemployment. ADDA mentions those.
Right.
And Wikipedia adds things like, poorer academic results if you're studying, maybe not achieving what you feel you're capable of, and even things like a worse driving record, more tickets, maybe accidents.
And it's not just about external stuff like jobs or grades, is it?
No, absolutely not. There's the internal impact, too. Wikipedia notes a potential for developing a more negative self-view, lower self-esteem, and crucially, higher rates of other mental health conditions often go hand in hand, like depression and anxiety.
It sounds like it can become a difficult cycle.
It really can. The ongoing struggles can chip away at your confidence and contribute to those other mental health issues.
And it's quite striking that for so many people diagnosed as kids, Was it 40 to 60%? The symptoms carry on into adulthood.
Yes, and for about 15%, they still meet the full diagnostic criteria as adults. It really underlines that this isn't just a childhood thing. It often requires ongoing understanding and support.
Which brings us nicely to workplace support and rights. What protections are there?
This is really important. In the U.S., the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA provides significant protection. If you work for a company with 15 or more employees, they're legally required to provide reasonable accommodations for employees with diagnosed disabilities, including ADHD.
Okay.
And Healthline also pointed out that the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 offers similar protections, often relevant in federal employment or federally funded programs.
So these aren't just like optional extras. They're legal rights.
Exactly. They're about leveling the playing field, ensuring you have an equal opportunity to succeed based on your skills, not hindered unfairly by the condition.
Okay, that term reasonable accommodations gets thrown around a lot.
Yeah.
What does it actually mean in practice? What could it look like for someone with ADHD?
So ADDA defines them broadly as, changes or adjustments to a job or work environment that allow an employee with a disability to perform the essential functions of the job.
Right.
And they give some great practical examples. It could be things like flexible scheduling, maybe starting earlier or later, or having slightly different break times to help manage focus.
Okay, that makes sense. What else?
A big one is creating a workspace with fewer distractions. That might mean providing noise-canceling headphones, putting up partitions, maybe allowing someone to work in a quieter area or even a private office if possible.
I can definitely see how that would help with focus.
Absolutely. Other things include using assistive technology like reminder apps, calendar alerts, maybe project management software. Pomodoro timers came up too.
The Pomodoro technique, yeah.
Exactly. Also, providing instructions in writing, not just verbally, breaking down large tasks into smaller steps, maybe even using screen recordings to demonstrate a process.
That sounds really helpful, especially for memory or getting started on tasks.
It can be. And even meetings. Things like providing an agenda beforehand, maybe having a designated note taker, allowing short breaks during long meetings, or being understanding about non-disruptive fidgeting.
It seems like these accommodations aren't just benefiting the employee, are they? Employers stand to gain, too.
Oh, for sure. ADDA really stresses this. When employees get the support they need, they tend to be, happier, more focused, more productive. It can lead to better job satisfaction, lower turnover.
Which saves the company money.
Right. And it improves overall team morale and collaboration when everyone feels supported and able to contribute their best work. It's a win-win, really.
So if you're listening and thinking, okay, some of these could really make a difference for me, how do you go about asking for them?
ADDA suggests a process. First, it's about self-awareness. Really pinpoint the specific challenges you face at work because of your ADHD. Where do you struggle most? Then, it's usually helpful to get documentation, like a letter from your doctor, confirming the diagnosis, and maybe suggesting accommodations that could help with the specific impacts on your work.
And then you talk to HR or your manager.
Yes. And the key, according to ADDA, is how you frame it. Don't just present problems, propose solutions. Focus on how these accommodations will help you perform your job more effectively.
That's a great approach, focusing on solutions. And employers have a role too, right, in creating the right environment.
Definitely. ADDA points out that employers should ideally be proactive, educating managers and staff about neurodiversity, about ADHD specifically, being open to offering accommodations without making it a huge battle.
Fostering open communication.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Creating a culture where people feel safe talking about their needs. And remembering, as ADDA says, these are a right designed to level the playing field, not some kind of special favor.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly and talk about learning, especially for adults. There was some information touching on adult learners with ADHD in academic settings.
Yeah, and you can see how the challenges often mirror the ones in the workplace, right? Difficulty with organization, maintaining focus during, say, long lectures, or while studying, managing deadlines and assignments effectively. These can definitely create barriers in college or other learning environments.
Right. The source material mentioned a specific case study, someone named Anne.
Yes, Anne's story was quite illustrative. She apparently really struggled initially when she first went to college, had a hard time managing the workload, didn't seek out accommodations, and eventually felt overwhelmed and actually withdrew from school for a while.
Oh, wow. But she went back.
She did. And the second time around, she apparently did things differently. She actively used academic accommodations that were available and Crucially, she switched her major to something that was a much better fit for her interests and how she worked best. And this time, she was successful.
So what can we take away from Anne's experience? What are the lessons there?
There are a few key things. One, sometimes students, well, they might resist using support services at first. Maybe they want to try and do it all on their own.
Yeah, I could see that.
Two, sometimes learning what you need involves, well, learning the hard way, unfortunately. Experiencing the difficulties can make you realize you do need that support.
Right.
Three, taking a break, like Anne did, isn't failure. It can actually be a really positive step, giving you time to regroup and figure things out. And lastly, being ready for college isn't static. It's something that evolves as you learn more about yourself and how to manage.
That's really insightful. It's not always a straight path. The source also mentioned implementation intention strategies. What's that about?
Ah, yes. These are basically techniques to help bridge the gap between intending to do something and actually doing it. It's about getting really specific with your planning.
How so?
So instead of just saying, I need to study for my exam, you make a very concrete plan. When it's 7 p.m. on Wednesday night, the when, I will go to the quiet section of the library, the where, and review my class notes for Chapter 3 for 45 minutes, the how.
Ah, okay. Making it super specific.
Exactly.
Oh.
That if then or when, where, how structure makes it much more likely you'll follow through, especially when dealing with procrastination or initiation challenges common in ADHD.
That sounds really practical. And family support came up too, didn't it? Especially for college students.
Yes, absolutely. The info highlighted how important strong family connections can be. They can act as a protective factor against things like depression or suicidal thoughts, which is really significant for students navigating learning differences.
But there can be challenges with communication between families and colleges.
Yeah, that was an interesting point. Sometimes colleges, because of legal things like assuming students are independent adults or privacy rules like HIPAA and FERPA, might limit communication with families.
Right, once you're 18.
Exactly, but the source kind of argued for finding better ways for colleges, students, and families to communicate appropriately because that support network can be so vital.
Yeah, finding the right support network seems crucial. And that leads us to the Reddit thread you looked at from Rad Women about finding therapists. It sounds like that can be a real struggle.
It really can be, and that thread highlighted some common frustrations. A lot of people, especially women perhaps, or those with less obvious hyperactive symptoms, have felt, well, dismissed or misunderstood by therapists who maybe hold older, more stereotypical views of ADHD.
Like they expect you to be bouncing off the walls.
Sort of, yeah. Or they might not fully grasp the impact of the inattentive symptoms or the executive function challenges or the emotional dysregulation we talked about. There's a real fear of not being heard or validated.
So what advice came out of that discussion? How can you find a therapist who does get it?
There were some really practical tips. One big one was ask directly. When you're contacting potential therapists, maybe in that first call or email, ask them specifically about their experience with adult ADHD.
Don't just rely on their website profile.
Right. Ask about their approach, what strategies they use. Another tip was to look for therapists who specifically list ADHD or maybe learning disabilities, executive function coaching, or even related things like anxiety as specialties. Some people mention trying to find a therapist who actually has ADHD themselves, though that's obviously a bit down to luck. But the idea is they might have that lived experience.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Getting recommendations from other people with ADHD, maybe in online communities like that subreddit, was another suggestion. Or checking out university counseling centers or clinics that specialize in ADHD or related conditions.
And knowing the difference between different types of professionals.
Yes, understanding that psychiatrists often focus more on medication management, while therapists, counselors, or psychologists typically do more of the talk therapy, coping strategies, skill building. Many people find seeing both is helpful.
The main thing seems to be finding someone you click with, who makes you feel understood.
Absolutely. That therapeutic relationship, feeling heard and validated, is just fundamental. You need to feel comfortable and trust their expertise in your specific experience of ADHD.
Okay, let's pivot one more time to another area that often comes up. Managing money. CHADD had insights on finances in ADHD.
Yes, and this is a big one for many adults with ADHD. Financial management can feel like, well, a real minefield sometimes.
Why is that? What are the common challenges?
CHADD pointed out difficulties like consistently tracking where your money is going, both income and spending, keeping track of bills and due dates, which can lead to late fees. Managing impulsive spending is often a big challenge, difficulty saving money regularly, maybe accumulating debt, and just general procrastination around financial tasks like budgeting or taxes.
It sounds like the executive function challenges we talked about really play out here.
Exactly. Planning, organization, impulse control, follow through, they're all heavily involved in managing finances effectively.
But CHCDD also offered practical strategies, right? It's not hopeless.
No, definitely not. They had some very concrete suggestions. A key first step is just tracking your spending, actively monitoring where the money goes.
Like an app.
Could be an app, could be a simple notebook, whatever works for you. But logging everything, including those little online purchases that add up, then identifying spending categories, groceries, bills, fun money, etc.
Okay.
Tracking both fixed costs like rent or loan payments and those variable costs like food or entertainment. And then the crucial bit, comparing your total spending to your income regularly, seeing the reality.
That awareness sounds key. What about planning for the future?
Setting clear financial goals is important. Short-term, medium-term, long-term, and making sure those goals actually align with what you value. Then, break those big goals down into really small, manageable steps.
Make it less overwhelming.
Precisely. And CHAD also really emphasized, don't be afraid to ask for help. Talk to a trusted friend or family member. Maybe bring it up with your therapist, especially around impulse control. Or even consider working with a financial coach, maybe one who understands ADHD.
That's a great reminder. Seeking support is a strength. Finally, just briefly, Healthline mentioned that it's not all challenges. There can be strengths associated with ADHD too.
Yes, absolutely. It's so important to remember this. While we've focused a lot on the difficulties, ADHD can also come with unique strengths. Healthline mentioned things like intense passion and hyperfocus when interested in something,
Right.
thriving in high-energy, fast-paced environments, sometimes being very creative, hands-on problem solvers, maybe being more willing to take independent risks, which can be great for entrepreneurs.
So finding work that plays to those strengths could be really beneficial.
Definitely. Thinking about careers that align with those potential strengths rather than constantly fighting against the grain can make a huge difference.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. To kind of wrap things up, what are the main messages you hope you, our listener, take away from this deep dive?
I think the big picture is that, yes, adult ADHD is real, it's complex, it's often lifelong, and it can definitely create significant hurdles in work, learning, finances, relationships. But with the right understanding, with appropriate strategies and accommodations, and crucially, with good support systems, people with ADHD can absolutely thrive. It's not a life sentence of struggle.
And getting an accurate diagnosis, finding professionals who really understand adult ADHD, that seems absolutely critical.
It really is. So we really hope that you, listening, can take some of the specific strategies or resources we've talked about today and see which ones might fit your own situation, your own challenges.
Yeah, explore what resonates. And maybe a final thought to leave you with. Considering everything we've explored today, all these insights and strategies, what's maybe one small, specific action you feel you could take this week? Just one thing.
It doesn't have to be huge. Maybe it's looking up an app or drafting that email to ask about accommodations or just acknowledging one challenge without judgment. Just one small step you feel empowered to take to understand or manage your experience with ADHD a little better.